There's a little more vulnerability than usual.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that that's where it's realistic. We can be realistic about it, you know? And so that's what we've been talking about. And so we thought, hey, let's just share this with some other folks, because one of the challenges we have is social media is our outside, you know, the window to life right now. We get to see what's going on, but it's not always the whole picture. It's not the whole story, right? And so while as a mom, I'm watching all these wonderful things happening. People are working on family songs together and their dance routines together. They've got themed dinner nights. They're doing all sorts of really fun, really cool things, and we're participating too. But to that end, it is not all that. It is so much more, and we are just this close to losing it, right? But we're also managing, and so we talked about how are we getting through this, and more specifically the stress piece of it that keeps piling on and piling on and piling on. There's a lot of moments where I wake up in the morning and I go, I don't I don't think I want to do this today.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I'm not.
Well, and like we were talking about when we were coming up with our title, and um, usually the conversation is moving from surviving to thriving, because
Right.
that's what our general focus is. And in this upside down world that we find ourselves in, the narrative has shifted.
Right.
And the new conversation that I'm having with people is moving from thriving to surviving,
Right.
because so many of us feel like we're just in survival mode right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's a whole strange concept to wrap our brains around to begin with.
Right. Right. And we found that a lot of times it's just, well, how do you cope with it? I don't know. You wake up in the middle of the night, you can't fall back asleep, you're paralyzed by indecision. That's really one of the big ones, right? I mean, I have so much I need to do. I have so much I need to get done. I have two little ones that are looking for my attention, one of whom is a little bit more self-reliant, the other of whom needs a lot of extra attention. And yet, I have so much to do. And so when I finally get a chance to do it, I'm like, what was I going to do?
Mhm.
Or I don't have this in me. Like I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I've started, coloring because that's what I've been working on. I mean, and now I'm beating myself because I'm not getting anything done. This
Mhm.
is like this cycle, this circle of um, challenges. And there's something scientific to that, right?
So I think one thing that's helpful for people to understand, well, at least I can speak for myself. It's helpful for me to understand that in times of heightened stress, our biochemical reaction, or how our body works, is heightened stress releases cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's one of the hormones that's released in traumatic situations. It's what's responsible for, we hear when folks talk about PTSD, we hear the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens when we have increased levels of cortisol running through our bodies? Well, heightened cortisol is associated with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Heightened cortisol is associated with depression. One of the side effects of too much cortisol, if you will, is concentration problems, memory problems, clouded thinking, not being able to perceive properly. And so when you were saying, there's so much that I need to do and I can't seem to get anything done, that's the first thing that popped into my mind,
Mm-hmm.
is like, there's a certain level that is out of our control
Yeah.
because our bodies are literally operating differently.
Yeah. And it's, it's not for a lack of trying. I am trying to organize my thoughts to give myself some ideas. All right, get it done in this order, call this person. But even still, I believe there's something to that. And the brain fog is something very real. And so now I'm having to look at adjusting how much, I'm using a little bit more both the cannabis and the CBD side to get it a little bit more in balance, but it is still out of whack.
Yeah.
And it's day to day, moment to moment. Some moments are good, and some nights I can sleep, some nights not so much. So this is the norm. This is that new norm we're kind of
So
looking
we have to kind of think of it, a lot of us are caregivers. So we are accustomed to caring for people with chronic illnesses. And, when somebody has a chronic illness, they have different abilities than they used to have.
hmm hmm
And so this isn't a chronic condition, it's an acute condition. But just like we wouldn't get frustrated with our loved one who has lost their ability, functional ability to do something, we would be more patient with them because we know, wait a minute, this is not something that's really in their control. It's out of their control.
Right, right.
So I need to take a little more time. I need to be a little more patient and a little more gentle. We need to
Compassionate.
be able to apply that to ourselves as well and say, okay, I'm not operating at 100%. I'm not even operating at 90%. I might only be operating at 10%.
Right.
But look, here's my list. I know I'm doing all the things that I am supposed to be doing, and I still am not able to operate at full tilt. And so, like, we would be gentle with our loved one who has lost their ability, probably permanently. We need to be gentle with ourselves because we've lost some of our abilities, at least temporarily.
Right. And we have to give ourselves a break on that. It's a really good point. It's kind of like if you can imagine for all my computer folks that who've had to work from an office and maybe you had to dial in at one point. There's a connection that takes more time. It takes more energy to get to because you're not in the right place. Same thing applies here. We are not in our right place. Things are out of order, and you are trying to. It's like somebody took
Our
the table.
our operating systems are experiencing technical difficulties.
It's the best way to put it. And I just,
Our internal processing system is experiencing technical difficulties.
exactly, exactly. And then when you think that you're trying to get those pieces going, you're trying to get those, the everything back on track again. Just one thing will slow the whole process down. That
Or can
thought of,
throw it off kilter altogether.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, you may very well need a reboot, a complete and utter reboot. And
You
that's
might
the point.
need to shut it down.
So that's one of the things that we've talked about doing, which has made a difference for you. It's making a difference on my end. It's is taking that reboot and going, yep, I'm down. It's down. This isn't good. And for everybody, it might be a little different. Maybe you need to go in the other room and get your gloves on and use the punching bag and or turn on Zumba and go dance it out. Or maybe it's listening to the Beaches music and crying it out, or whatever that something is.
It might even be taking a nap
Taking a nap. Oh
in
my
the
gosh,
middle of the day.
I have told my children how much I need to put myself in timeout. I mean, don't talk to mommy right now. She's going into timeout. She's not allowed
Hmm.
to talk to you.
Yeah. I think we need to be able to give ourselves a system reboot.
Yeah. And yet we can't linger here, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's easy to go shut down. I can go, blow a gasket, go take a walk and be like, well, this is nice. I can but there's this recurring moment where either you know that you have to get out of it, yet your brain keeps going and going and going. Or maybe you're to the point where everything's so heavy, you're not even able to get that go. You're not able to
So
get
I think there are a couple of strategies. I mean, there are a lot of strategies that people can utilize. Two of my favorite strategies I'll talk about. So when my kids were little, um, I used to kind of work through tantrums with them by early on. I explained to them, you know, the only way out is through.
Mhm.
When we're talking about difficult emotions and difficult times, really the only way out is through. And sometimes through is very uncomfortable. And it can also feel overwhelming. So, what I used to tell them is, look, when you're feeling like you are going to blow a gasket, like you're just so sad, like something, you need some kind of an emotional or cathartic release, you know, set your alarm.
Mhm.
Give yourself 15, 20 minutes. Go in your room, shut the door, take all of that that's swirling around in your head, unpack it,
Mhm.
put it out all around you. Pick up each of those pieces, look at it, feel it, let it wash over you. If it means crying, cry with it. If it means screaming, get a pillow, put your face into it and scream.
Mhm.
If it you need more of a physical release, punch the pillow. Don't punch a person, but punching a pillow is perfectly acceptable.
Mhm.
Give yourself that time to really, really unpack it, sit with it, let it wash over you, feel it, release it somehow. And then, you know, when that alarm rings, just like when that alarm rings in the morning, and we know that we might be able to hit snooze once, maybe pushing it twice, but we're accustomed to that already. So when that time limited unpack your emotions is up, that's when you have to take them, pack them back up, put them in the drawer,
Mhm.
and shut the drawer for another day. They're not gone, they're still there.
Right.
But you know, we are accountable to other people, and we can be accountable to ourselves too. You know, I am going to, you know, it's funny, I have timed meltdowns.
Mhm. You kind of have to. I mean, you have to let those feelings out, but you can't let them overwhelm you. And there's a lot of times right now where there's a lot of people like me that, this is I the first and second week of being at home, being homeschooling, being a business owner who's now pivoting their business left and right, like I'm doing the twist, all of that. But week, I think after Easter for us, we had, I had to do the usual Easter thing, and trying to make it appear normal, appear like any other Easter when we know it's not. Um, it was hard, and so I think Monday of this week, of the Monday after Easter and the Tuesday after Easter, like we knew what it was like because we did this a couple of weeks in a row, and we managed. But waking up on Monday morning, did I have it in me? Nope. I didn't realize that at first. I got up with the energy to, okay, let's do it. And then all of a sudden it just like hits you and you go, I don't have this in me.
Mm.
And that's okay. And that's okay to step aside and to call a friend and to talk it out or to do whatever you have to do or have that pity party. That's what I usually have to do is call it a pity party because I need it sometimes. This sucks. This is not
Mhm.
my life that I had intended. This is not how my college degree is going to go down. So it's a matter of how do we move through that. And I would say the next question is what do you do to because it does come back. Okay, so now you've packed it away, you've put it in the drawer, you've put your 15-minute time in,
So from that
back in your
point,
head.
I utilize my secondary strategy. And my secondary strategy is to practice mindfulness. And we hear a lot about mindfulness and what is mindfulness. I mean, it's really a pretty basic concept. And really, all that it is being aware of your feelings, your thoughts, your sensations, and your surroundings as they are. No judgments about it, just noticing new things about the familiar,
Right.
taking your attention and moving it to a deeper level. And mindfulness helps to build emotional well-being, and it does so in a threefold way. The first is it helps us to accept the situation as it is. When we're able to release the judgment about it, and we're just like, wow, this really sucks, and it just sucks, that's just the way it is, without necessarily saying, oh, that's a bad thing and I have to change it. Just accept it as it is.
Right. Yep.
Another key component of mindfulness is practicing gratitude, and practicing gratitude in times of uncertainty it actually helps our brain to descend out of that negativity spiral. And it helps to quiet the brain, calm the body, and the natural reaction is going to be a release of that biochemical cortisol, which is going to have a naturally stabilizing and helps to clear the thinking. And the third component really is prioritizing self-care and finding just those little things that help us feel good. It doesn't even have to be something good.
Right. I mean, you're not talking about, you don't have to, we can't go get a massage. That's not really on the, but, you know,
I have been, for me, prioritizing self-care is I'm a bit of a coffee snob. And, normally I'm like, I can't have my espresso just the way I want it. That's fine. During these times, I make sure that I have my morning coffee exactly the way I want it, because that's a little tiny thing that I can control,
right.
that I know makes me feel better.
And I think it's why a lot of moms like myself have gone back into the kitchen and are cooking and baking up a storm. I think there's something to that, that I have control over this. Well, maybe not if you would have seen the bread I tried to make, but nonetheless, but there's something about it. I have a survival skill. I have a skill that I know that I can use. I know that this makes me feel good, and darn it if I'm not going to have those cinnamon buns because I made them myself. So
Exactly.
if
I
that's
mean,
what that takes.
you don't get a free pass to start indulging in all kinds of self-destructive behaviors and, drinking too much and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've only done the 10 or 11 a.m. thing a couple of days out of the week. I've really limited it. It helps. I found myself like, what time is it? Is it too early? But I've caught myself and said, all right, did I even need a glass of wine? No, not yet. And then I don't even get to it because I'm doing other stuff with the kids. But, I mean, you do have to have
I think if we can move between the allowing ourselves to feel things that we normally view as unacceptable, and if we take the little time to connect to ourselves in the moment, quiet that mind, calm the body, those two strategies alone can really help us make it through a super challenging day. We don't have to practice like complicated, big, gigantic, I'm going to meditate every day for 20 minutes.
Right.
It's not necessary. If you do and it helps, that's great.
Awesome. Awesome.
But
But
it's not necessary. It can just be a 5-minute centering, 5 things in the room. What are 5 things that I can look at in this room? There's a red ball, there's a tennis ball, there's a stool. Whenever we bring ourselves back to the present moment, in counseling, we call that grounding.
right.
And when we can ground ourselves in the present, the impact on us is it calms us.
Right. Right. Because you can't change the past. You can't, predict the future. You've got now, right now. Focus on the now. And I do find that for me, the visual is, I can envision myself putting my arm around me. And every time my head goes to that thought that I keep trying to dismiss, I'm walking myself away to that red ball, to that, to that something that's right here, right now, focusing on this moment right now. So practice that. I've heard somebody use, the bubble, put it in a bubble, blow that bubble away, write it down, put it into, put it onto paper, crumple it up.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel so inclined, we'll light it on fire, but do have an extinguisher nearby or put it
Definitely.
anyway. But definitely let those emotions go and tell yourself that there's no time for that because you're right here, right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you can't pack it up? When you've tried all of these different techniques, when you've had your pity party and now you've gotten to a point where I can't get out of bed. I don't have this in me anymore.
Well, that's the time to use your lifeline, because sometimes it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, we are responsible and accountable to ourselves. And we're good at being accountable to other people, but we need to be accountable to ourselves. And it can be very self-empowering to be accountable to yourself. And when you can't pull yourself out of it, that's the time to phone a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Either literally call a friend or reach out to a professional counselor. I mean, there's all kinds of phone counseling that's being done now, telehealth counseling. Doesn't have to be a long-term relationship. You can just reach out. Maybe you need a little support, once or twice. One of my favorite sayings is never underestimate the value of saying something out loud.
Right.
And that's what we call catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the foundation of the healing that happens in a counseling session, in a rap session with a close, trusted friend, is that we can take those thoughts that are inside our minds and they're ricocheting around
Right.
like a pinball. And, in order to put that next ball in play, if you've ever played pinball, the one ball has to be lost and the next ball needs to be released.
Sure.
So if we can release the thoughts, they're in our heads, they come out of our mouths, they don't make it go away, but it takes the power away from it and it pushes it to the side for a little bit.
That's a great way of putting it, because a lot of times it's kind of like that earworm. You get the song in your head, you can't get it out, you got to sing it. You've got to sing it, and that is how that's going to get out.
Yeah.
But until then, you keep hearing the same part, the same part, the
Sure.
same part.
And I have to tell you, as a therapist, that is one of my sticking points. Because I'm like, well, what the heck am I going to go to a counselor for? They're not going to teach me any coping skills that I don't already have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a true story. But when I get out of my own way and I get out of my ego and I say, okay, I can't get myself out of this. I have to use my lifeline. I need to have a supportive session. Sometimes all I do is talk about what's going on in my head. They've not given me any new strategy. I've told them all the strategies that I'm going to incorporate from this point forward.
Right.
And yet I feel better.
Feel better.
And
You
I
feel better.
feel like I can move on to my next thing.
Mhm.
So if there's one thing that I want to leave people with is never underestimate the value of saying something out loud.
That's a great point, and definitely something that you can take action on. You don't have to go into great depths, but just even picking up the phone and calling a friend and seeing how they're doing might be the little bit that you need to uh, keep that motion moving forward and get that thought out. So thank you. Josephine, if they wanted to get a hold of you, where would they find you?
Probably the easiest way is to send me an email. My email address is jokrehl@gmail.com. That's JOKREHL@gmail.com. I am offering some phone sessions, some Zoom sessions during this time if people just need somebody to connect with, to have a little bit of extra support. I also am the founder and owner of a medical cannabis company. Another way that folks can find me is through my website, mmjknowledge.com. It's got my contact information on there. But again, easiest way is to send me an email, jokrehl@gmail.com.
Perfect. And that is, if you're listening or watching and you personally are looking for that push or need to get it out, and maybe you're the caregiver who doesn't have somebody that's able to listen, take advantage of reaching out to Josephine and get it out. It's time. Thank you so much for giving us the insight to maybe get through today a little bit easier. If you need more information, you can again find us at our See Our World Facebook page. We've got all sorts of insights, motivation, things to learn about. And of course, our YouTube site, CRW Network, has all sorts of content. You can take in recipes and start infusing CBD or THC into your world. You can start learning about different techniques and tricks on how people are extracting cannabis or CBD. So much more. Is it going to help you, mom, your pet, all of that? But in the meantime, thank you again, Josephine, for being a part of helping people get through today. This is Life in the Panini Press, and I'm Colette Florido.
Thanks, Colette. Have a great day.
You too.